Hey everyone, it's Vanessa Callahan, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the Calm, Empowered Parent podcast. Together, let's challenge the idea that parenting has to be perfect. We know that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to raising children, and while love is the key, it sure helps to have the right tools for the job. Raising resilient humans is intensely personal and even transformative work, and I'm here for it. Let's laugh, cry, heal, and learn together. Here we go. I'm so excited to have with me two really esteemed colleagues. We have Jessica, Bryant, and Katie Sullivan. They are both in their own ways specialized on sleep and improving families' experience with getting their kids to sleep, getting them to bed, getting to stay in bed, improving the quality of sleep, problem solving and troubleshooting sleep issues, and all the things that are connected to sleep. And I'm so excited to have both of you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so starting with Jessica, we have a proven pediatric sleep strategist with us who has 30 years of experience from sitting on floors, working with young children and their families to consulting with the Better Sleep Council. And she's the creator of the Sleep Happy Plan, which is a step-by-step approach designed to turn sleepless nights into peaceful dreams. And we're just so lucky to have someone here who has helped over 2,000 families across 5 countries find the rest they deserve. And I know as a spokesperson, especially of the Better Sleep Council, you are so passionate about having an opportunity to come on today and really promote the idea that prioritizing sleep is something we should all be paying more attention to. So welcome, Jessica. So glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and talk about my favorite subject.
Yeah, absolutely. I know as a mom of 3, you have twins in high school and an older child in college. You know, you've been through kind of the different stages and ages of what sleep can look like for your family too. So we're excited to learn not only from your professional, but personal experience. And we also have here Katie Sullivan, who is a dear friend in the sense that we've been working together on and off as consultants and educators. And we both have a Montessori background. And Katie, went and left the classroom, became a mama of 2 young ones, and then also pursued her master's in early childhood. And as she was working with being a doula as well, a postpartum doula, et cetera, she started to realize that sleep was something that was really important. And that when she could help not only navigate early years, but especially unlock sort of the secrets of sleep for each family, that she could have a larger impact. So she's here to help us to understand from her 20 years of experience how we could even create personalized sleeping and parenting plans, foster good sleep habits from birth, and guide families from infant and through the toddler stages. And all of your focus on ages 0 to 3, that is the crucial time to feel like we're going to be good at this parenting thing, and that sleep might actually be something that all family members get to have. So welcome, Katie. So glad you're here.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And so, I've touched a little bit on it, but, I'm curious. We're going to start with Katie. I want to hear your perspective on why work on sleep. I mean, you both are so capable of guiding folks on so many areas of parenting life. So, what has inspired you to focus your work on sleep in particular and how to improve it?
Well, I actually, when I started my business, Parenting Doula, I imagined it more being somewhat of a virtual postpartum doula practice that kind of expanded through the first 3 years. And I started taking clients, and at the same time, my daughter started preschool. Pandemic baby, didn't really talk to any moms ever. So, talking to a lot of moms and, dads, caregivers in my personal life and professional life, I kept hearing the same thing again and again when parents are talking about sleep. I hear the word difficult a lot, especially, 0 to 3, how's sleep? Difficult. The other phrase I would hear again and again is survival mode. And so even people who were initially wanted more parent education, it always kept coming back to sleep. So I thought that was just a huge area of need, and it helped me kind of hone in my focus a little bit.
Absolutely. I think like you answered the call because difficult and survival mode are definitely, it would hit me in a special place as well. How about for you, Jessica? How did you shift to mean?
Much of the same. Back when I became a mom, There was not a lot of sleep information, and we did not have access to Google and 50 million other ideas and thoughts all in your face at one time. But similarly, I saw my friends and that were just spent at the end of the day, and they hated parenting, mothering. They, are super negative and just frustrated and hitting a wall and didn't feel like they had time for themselves or their partners. And it just kept, like Katie said, coming up. And I thought, oh, if if there's anything I could do to just give you a little lift or a little answer to help, and that made your day easier or more rested. I don't know how you guys are when you're tired or chronically sleep deprived, but I'm not really a functioning nice human. And so I thought that above all, I really believe that, being able to find the joys and enjoy the time. I don't mean you have to enjoy every moment. I'm not trying to promote that, but find little things throughout the day and mothering that you enjoy and be able to be present and feel good about it and feel like you're parenting. And I used to hear so much like I'm in survival mode, like Katie said, and I'm not being the parent I want to be. So that just really, I thought, well, sleep is that one area that I could support with. Like I could figure out or I could share tips on. And so that I just have that mom in my head. If she's looking for answers, I want to offer some options.
And what I've noticed, like in the sort of cultural context of this conversation, is that sleep is starting to creep up as something that people are talking about more around prioritizing. And it seems like sleep is about to have its moment. And that's where when I heard about the Better Sleep Council and you getting involved and just, this idea of like, this is a broader message here that we need to bring out into, all kinds of spaces. Jessica, help us all understand why this conversation might be more important now than ever, like particularly with this generation that, you have your teens as well.
Better sleep, right? Better sleep
Yeah.
for families. We're seeing a lot of studies coming out with the rise in mental health challenges in our young adults, in our teens. We're also operating with a lot more sensory input into our nervous system with our phones and our screens, and that our bodies aren't used to. And so much of our society has been telling us that to be a good parent, you just are sleep deprived for 6 years, or that you just have a bad sleeper, or that this is just part of parenting. And that doesn't help anybody. And so it doesn't give something practical that a tired parent can go home and say, okay, I feel good about this. I'm going to try it for 3 nights, and be consistent and see what happens. Or, oh, I didn't know my baby was supposed to be sleeping 14 to 15 hours total in a day, at a certain age. And so just feeding that information, and especially the teenagers, parents don't today, at least this is my experience, they don't think they need to give their teenager a bedtime, or they don't think that they need to give a boundary for screens. And that's a lot of weight on a child. And some kids are going to do great with it, and other kids are going to struggle. And I spoke with some 12-year-old girls a couple weeks ago, and I was flabbergasted at when they were going to bed and how little sleep they were getting at 12. And so that just tells me that parents, they're not getting the information. It's not there. It's not accessible. And so this is the time for sleep to have its moments, like you said, Vanessa. I like that.
And something I see too a lot, if I could share, that parents who do know that sleep is important don't feel like empowered with enough certainty of how, or like convincing data for their tweens and teens especially to back up and like take a bold stand. And I think a lot of parents are also afraid of taking things away from their kids, like more like that time with their phone, or that late night text thread, or that late night video game session. And so in a way, they're sort of opting out of their role in the evenings, especially with these older kids who are sort of pushing back and pushing into their sleep time pretty intensely by not just minutes, but hours. So yeah, I'm seeing this trend too. So I love that you want to empower them with information and, give them a tool for getting through to their teens and tweens and stepping into that role powerfully, especially for those who are ready to, they just are not quite sure how. And if we kind of wind back to like the really early years, Katie, since that's where you specialize, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what have you noticed stand out for this, this conversation, this generation that right now, like some pieces that you think might be missing that, you really want to elevate in this?
Yeah, I think
conversation?
we live in a time where there is more information out there than ever, more, especially data accurate information, but also a lot more distractions, a lot more misinformation. So I think it's really important to emphasize sleep education for parents, especially, all the baby classes you take when you're pregnant with your first child. Sleep education is not really offered. I think it should be, if not prenatally, as part of postpartum. Also, perinatal mood disorders. A lot of people don't know they are so prevalent these days with both prenatal and postpartum parents, and even more so when they are sleep deprived. So, whatever we can do to help support families, give them the tools, give them accurate information. I see part of my job as being kind of a filter for families, for parents, to help them really know, like, oh, this is what's possible. This is real. This is not real. This is a way you can meet your goals. Oh, yes, your goals actually are age appropriate, or no, actually, that's, your kid is capable of more than that at this age. I think a lot of people don't really know how capable little kids are and with sleep and with in a lot of areas. So bring that forward more.
And how understandable too, because if this is their first child or, their first children or first child with this temperament or this, sort of colicky nature or whatever, like they don't have the experience. And so how would they know? And
So
how human of them to be struggling around this. And I just love how we want to empower them. And something that would be really helpful is to know what are one or two things that you now understand about sleep, Katie, but wish you knew sooner about how better sleep actually works.
yeah, I just want to echo, most people don't have a background in early education or sleep science or all these things that are so important for young children and for their families to know. And then society, of course, expects them to know everything and do everything right. um, so there are definitely things I wish I understood sooner about how sleep works. I knew intellectually as a teacher, babysitter, caregiver, but I didn't really know, in my heart, in my soul, how different it is when they're your own children, and how easy it is to kind of get swept up in the moment, or think, oh, it doesn't really matter if I read an extra story. Like, they'll probably sleep better if I stay a little longer. Or I find these little moments, I catch myself all the time, and I keep coming back to, okay, I got to make a plan and stick with it. And that really helps my children be calmer and happier in the long run. So that would definitely be the first thing: make a plan, stick to it. And the second thing is, if something is difficult, if there's a hard transition or a hard moment in your day, if your child is taking a long time to fall asleep, sometimes a little shift can make a huge difference. When my baby was first born, my first baby, maybe, around 4 months or so, I was still jiggling her for what seemed like forever to get her to have that last nap. It seems so important in the moment, and it's really helpful to kind of take a step back and be willing to experiment a little bit, and learn about what is age appropriate. And it's okay to try something, and every child is different, and different things work for each child.
Right.
So
Yeah, this is all
yeah.
making so much sense. I mean, in my work, we work on all the routines, and of course, bedtime and sleep routines are one of our top hits of ones we work on. And we always do set up a structure, but then there needs to be flexibility within that structure. It's almost like having that baseline of the plan and the structure sort of sets you free to then experiment in the actual day based on what's going on, and we can't always predict the child's mood or whether they ate a full meal or whether the nap went well or not. And so being able to be flexible within the structure is so key. I love that, Katie. It feels very grounding and kind of, inviting at the same time. It's like, oh, like I don't have to do it the same every single time, but I also want to have a plan that I rest into that my kids get familiar with. And that feels very balanced. So thank you for that. Jessica, how about for you? Like, what are some things that you now understand but wish you knew sooner about how better sleep works from your work?
Oh, so many things. Like Katie said, I didn't realize, how much sleep children really had or really slept, like how long they could sleep, how much they needed. I knew the boundaries, from, being a nanny and working with young toddlers, but it's a totally different thing when you're with a 5-month-old every single night, or you have two babies at once and you just can't do all the things plus a 3-year-old. And so I didn't realize, even though I knew the science behind it, just how comforting routines were, meaning me saying no, one more book is not an option tonight, in a very calm and unemotional, factual way, was actually helpful to the child because I stayed on track, versus, oh, tonight we got one more book. Well, maybe we can have 4 more books, and then maybe we can have 5 glasses of water, and maybe we could have colder water, and then maybe we could have hotter water, which literally I have had a client ask his mom for. And so just knowing the power of how much they need you to create that fence, that safety net. And even when you don't want to do it or you're just a little uncomfortable with it, that it really brings them a lot of comfort. And that is even at 12 and 13. I had to have a whole reset when I was working and it was summer. And my son is really, he'll ask questions because you might say yes, right? And so he's not bothered by the question. And I made the biggest mistake because he would say, can we go out to lunch today? And I was busy doing something else. And I said, maybe. Well, guess what? I kept that mind open. So he was coming back in 15 minutes and 15 more minutes. And then I started saying, wait, I talk to clients about this all the time. And I said, no, we cannot go out to lunch today. And you know what? He didn't come back with that question. And I could change my mind 2 hours later and decide, yeah, that was a great idea. Let's go. So I think the power of no throughout childhood is helpful because it fits in with those fences and those boundaries. So at the same time, if you have that overarching priority of, I want my kids to be well rested and I want my kids to be set for success. I don't want them to show up at school and be dozing off or having micro naps, micro sleeps at school. So what do I need to do or re-engineer because something has changed, or oh, all of a sudden this child has different sleep needs than my other child. It's rerouting, backing up, restarting.
I love that idea of sort of reverse engineering, like where you say, if this were true, then what would happen, right? So it's like, if sleep is our number one priority for evenings, then what would the rest of our evening look like? And then it might even back up to like, and what would our afternoons look like? And especially when you start getting into the land of kids doing a lot of after school enrichment activities, I can't tell you how many times I've ended up in a conversation with a parent where, I gently led them there, but eventually they said, oh my gosh, I'm overscheduling my kid and overextending them. And I have an overtired child who is so tired at the end of the day that they actually can't fall asleep because they're kind of past that threshold and we're in a bad loop here. No wonder their mood management has been harder than ever. No wonder their routines are starting to fall apart. No wonder they're pushing back when I'm asking for them to do things because they just want to chill. I get it now, right? And so we would start with, okay, what would it look like if we prioritize sleep?
Mm-hmm.
And that meant, saying, okay, after this semester, we're not going to do 5 after school activities. We're going to reduce it to 2.
Right.
and we're going to spread it out across the year. Things like that would come of those conversations. So I love this, like trying on this idea of what if sleep were the number one priority. And I know both of you help families like actually figure out how to do it too. But, reducing after school class is just one little piece of the puzzle. There's so much more. And we're going to get into some particular questions from listeners in just a moment. But I wanted to give you a chance. And, Jessica, maybe you could share with us first, what are some do's and don'ts that come to your mind that you think, like, if you could just sort of pop a few tips to some parents who are listening right now. They've gotten this far into the episode, so they must be wanting some next steps. What would you have them either stop doing or start doing? And give us a couple of your kind of top hits here. We'd love to hear them.
I think a big topic that I get asked all the time is, my child hates bedtime, or my child hates their room. And when you ask the question, or they're having anxiety with bedtime. And when you ask the question, the next question is, why do you feel that about your child? And they'll start to talk about delay tactics, one more book, come back, oh, I thought of a story to tell you about my friend at preschool, and all those things. And parents, some of the ones that I've talked to are really worried, like they hate their room, or they've got so much anxiety they can't sleep. And so they get new curtains, or they get black wrap curtains, or they get a weighted blanket, or they get new pajamas, or they get new sheets. And I always want to ask the question, what about if we thought that the child was questioning, like unsure of what's going to happen next, or unsure of the pattern because they can't predict what the parent's going to do next? What if, even though it looks like they hate their room or they are not tired, but by the questioning, what if we look at it differently? And I think that really helps parents see, like, oh, okay, the bigger picture is it worked because we went and sat down and we went back outside to play, or we got 5 more books or whatever. And so they're confused. So that's one thing, is just testing out and seeing if you can reflect differently on how your child's communicating. I think also parents get very in the rhythm of whatever schedule is working right this minute. And we forget, oh yeah, we're growing and developing and changing. And so they immediately, when a nap doesn't work with a baby, they immediately think, oh, I'm doing something wrong, And so I'm always like, wait, you had great routines. Let's go back, and what was the communication from your baby? Did they seem as sleepy at 2 o'clock as they did a month ago? Or, oh, actually, no, they weren't having their yawns or pulling at their skin or having the 7-mile stare. That's one sleepy cue that a lot of people don't realize. So just being in communication with your child and making notes of those. And I think sometimes we're so in the moment that it's hard. And then just knowing their sleepy cues versus their hunger cues is a huge, huge tip. That was one thing I didn't realize how hard that was. When I had kids, I literally sat with a notebook to try to figure out, like, what grunt or what, yawn or red eyes or 7-mile stare, or gurgle meant what. And so I think that early investment in their check engine lights and their signals really sets you up for being in communication with your child versus making assumptions that every cry is distress or hunger or a blanket situation each time, because their cries are all different.
And I'm hearing such a call for like attunement, but I think there's also like, what am I attuning to? Like, what am I looking for? So thank you for naming some specifics there to give us a sense of what that looks like. I know you also share the milestones as one of the things that you like to share with folks, and we'll get some information to folks in the show notes and at the end of the episode about how they can get your guide to the milestones, because I think there's a way that we do need to follow our kids into the next stage. And I know Katie and I both have this Montessori background where literally one of the taglines is follow the child. And so where this piece that you're talking about, Jessica, about communication, and I added in the word attunement, the concept of attunement. I know that that's something that informs your work too, Katie. And so I'm sure got some good tips and strategies for us as well, some do's and don'ts. Katie, what's on your mind today, or that you would like parents to know about?
I just, in response to Jessica, I was thinking a big part of it is really trust. Children come into the world knowing how to develop. They know, and one of the biggest things you can do is trust your child. Like they are capable of sleeping. And a lot of times parents maybe don't realize that they're interrupting this development, and that children, they are capable and they are deserving of our trust. And as they get older, especially, the older toddlers, giving them your trust really helps them instill that self-confidence. And I think that's a big piece of it, is really both through your actions and, verbally with littler kids, spell it out. Like, you can do this. Like, this is hard, but you got it. Like, you can sleep, you can stay in your bed. I know you can. Like, we can do this. So that's a big part of it. Trust your kids, trust yourself. I know there's a lot of self-doubt in parenthood, and a lot of that is, I don't want to say unnecessary, because a lot of times you can't really help it, but it's helpful to kind of take a step back and say, okay, is this just me being hard on myself, or is this really a real thing? And I know that's definitely something that I've struggled with, and it's helpful to try to tease that out. But yeah, just as far as some actionable steps, I tell everyone, I try to do it for myself, make a plan, write it down. If it's a littler kid, give them a copy of the plan, but use pictures. Or an older kid, you can use words. Even writing it down in front of a child, even if they can't read, there's power in that. And and they'll keep asking you to read it to them. And if it's the middle of the night, you can have your paper. You can say, oh, here, let's look at this. Okay, this is what we're going to do. So it gives you something to kind of fall back on. And then again, also coming back to the wiggle room, be aware of how much wiggle room you're giving and when you're giving the wiggle room too. I think it's important to give children choices and a sense of control, but it's also important to keep those areas the same every day. So they always know, okay, this is the time where I can pick a chapter book or a picture book. I can pick, whatever, these pajamas, those pajamas. I can pick if I brush my teeth first or wash my face first. As much control, as much choices. I can pick, am I going to turn off the light, or is mom going to turn off the light? Whatever. But then also be super clear about where they don't have control. Those areas should also stay the same as much as possible. I really find that children are calmer and happier when they really know where the line is. And then with toddlers, older toddlers, especially, threes, even, four up, older, as the older they get, involve them in making the plan. A lot of parents don't think to ask their kid, what do you think would help? And older kids too are great at problem solving, great at brainstorming. Having them involved also helps them have some kind of buy-in, which is really helpful. They're kind of a little more on board if they've helped make the plan. And then with teeny tiny babies, I am a big wake window person. I'd say, follow the wake window. The teeny tiny brand new baby does not need to be awake more than 45 minutes, more than an hour. And I'm a big promoter of, watch the clock and put your baby to bed before they look tired, before they're fussing. I think that is kind of a huge, huge thing that parents don't really know. They think, oh, well, I'll wait till they're fussing to try to put them to bed. But then at that point, it's hard, it's harder to do anything new, to do anything hard when you're upset, when you're overtired, when you're, fussy, as adults and as babies. So big wake up person.
Yeah, so true. Jessica, it looked like you have something else you wanted to share
Oh,
about.
I just wanted to build on top of Katie and say, yes, I'm so glad you brought up trusting your instincts, especially for moms, trusting your frustration. Like, what is the frustration telling you? That it's not working for you? And that's okay, or you don't have the answer to the frustration and you need to ask for help or discuss it. So I love talking about that. And then what Katie was saying about children and how just smart they are. I talk to parents all the time about, talking to their children about like sleep is coming up, and I start introducing sleep jobs really early with my toddlers and breaking sleep down. And parents are like, really? They're going to understand that, but that's exactly what Katie's saying is they are smart and they want to sleep. So yes, all of those things and wake windows for sure. They're a secret, especially the newborn stage. Everyone thinks their newborn should stay awake for 2 hours, or at least that's what they say when they call me. And I'm like, oh, that's why you're fighting naps all day.
Right. There it is. So, wow, great gems, you two. Thank you so much. I mean, because you've helped hundreds and even thousands of folks with this. And, to see the themes come up, I know that you just shared some really important information with us. And we also had some listener questions that I thought would be really great to kick to you at this point. So, Connie asks from Sunnyvale, California, with kids ages 7 and 9. She says, my 7.5-year-old is struggling to fall asleep and stay asleep through the night, saying that she is scared and doesn't like sleeping. She keeps me up, wakes me up multiple times most nights. Is there anything we can do to help her and me get a restful night's sleep? And then we had another question that was really similar from Elise in the Chicago area with kids ages 5 and 9. She says, at times my kiddo comes to my room in the middle of the night. I'm able to walk him back to bed, but other times I'm too tired. What's the best way to stop this cycle? So we're talking a lot about this middle of the night waking. Elise's situation has a little extra flavor. She says that sometimes the kids sleepwalk or even have night terrors. So let's just start with the middle of the night. The staying asleep, middle of the night waking, being scared, night terrors, sleepwalking, and then of course the adult not being able to get good sleep and that sort of becoming this cycle. Yeah. What would you have to say? What do you have for Elise and Connie on this one? Maybe we'll start with Jessica this time.
For a 7-year-old who is, what I'm hearing is bedtime is kind of a struggle, calming to sleep, and then there's multiple wake ups at night, it seems like, and it's consistent. Where I usually start with not knowing the whole story, how, where the parent is at bedtime and things like that. I would first want to fixate on the scared. And so wanting to suggest to mom to kind of reflect on what do you feel like is the root of that, or what other words have you heard your child say, or whatever, or body language is your child exhibiting at bedtime or moving towards bedtime. And also during the day, I'm sure, Vanessa, you have some tips on this as well, but one of the things that I try to include is how do we validate it outside the bedroom and try to gain more information. So one of the things that I suggest is a piece of paper and some colors, and can you draw me a picture of what it feels like to be in your room at nighttime, or can you draw me a picture about bedtime? And I try to be very basic and leave out the word scared and leave out the word monster, anything like that, because I want to hear the child's voice. And so allowing them to draw the picture, feel validated, and then at the end of that experience, sitting down and saying, tell me about this part right here. Like, trying not to use assumption words, or, oh, that person looks really scared, or they have a sad face, not putting any descriptors from you on there, but letting the child see it and then seeing what you can learn from that. Does that open anything up? And maybe your child doesn't like to draw, but maybe acting it out, role playing it, with characters or toys or dolls. So I like to find a way to address the scared, because I want to make sure if there is a true fear that we're talking about it. And if the parent thinks, oh, I think she's just using that word because she knows how I responded in the past to it. And that might not be a case with the 7-year-old. That might be something more like a 2, 3, and 4-year-old. They just hear words. You can still do the same activity, but you're kind of just reiterating you're safe and all of those things within your bedtime routine. And then the second piece that causes me to want to reflect is the multiple wake ups at night. And so my first question is, when we're overtired and overstimulated at bedtime, and if our bodies are taking a long time to fall asleep and we get more overtired, that overstimulation makes it really hard to transition sleep cycles in the night. So those points at the end of a sleep cycle where your body's briefly waking up to start a new cycle, her child could be waking up fully and then immediately like, where's mom, and going to find mom. Versus if the child was not overstimulated and was well rested, they should be able to transition that cycle, rolling over, getting comfortable, going, something like that. Or it could be an indicator that they need some more coping skills, which I like to say one example would be, a little notebook on the bedside table and some kind of temporary light, that if they wake up in the middle of the night and they have a thought or a dream, again, not using any emotional language, that they can, if it's okay with the family, they can get up or not up, but they can draw a picture of what they thought, and they can share it with mom at breakfast. So really, is there anything mom needs to do if she feels like the child is overtired and overstimulated to kind of move up bedtime? If this has been happening a long time, for a 7-year-old, you're looking at 9 to 12 hours of total sleep. And just a caveat on that, it's a range of 6 to 12 age-wise for that 9 to 12 hours of sleep. So 9 hours may not be enough sleep for your 7-year-old, but it might be the right amount of sleep for somebody's 12-year-old. So keep that in mind too, as you're trying to figure out your child's sleep science. So I tend to lean on maybe there needs to be some adjustment with the timing of bedtime. And then I kind of just go into what is the child's pattern at bedtime, and is that affecting the wake up and coming to you or waking you up as well, with those kinds of, that's where I would start with that kind of question, not knowing the whole child story.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I feel like this gives both Connie and Elise a place to start with their, and some next steps that maybe they can try one of these things at a time and seeing what impact each one has. And that could really bring them some information about like where to put the attention. I think oftentimes when we have all these ideas, we want to kind of like pick one to prioritize and see how effect it has. And, just generally getting into the mode of getting curious is something I'm always encouraging parents to do. Like getting curious, like you said, be willing to experiment, Katie, right? Jessica, you just modeled like 3 things that they could try and see what happens, and sort of take the pressure off of solving it tonight. We're going to solve this over months or weeks at the minimum. And we're going to come to discover this together. And I think what I like about the picture drawing that I can piggyback off of a bit, because you kind of kicked it to me, Jessica, is in all ways that possible at all ages. And Katie is a big believer in this too. We want to collaborate with our kids and give them choices and autonomy and a sense of control and a sense of input. And so even bringing in some of these ideas and saying, like, if we're going to move the bedtime up, it's like, do you think it's 30 minutes or 45 minutes that is really going to make the difference? Which one do you want to try first? And starting to like have the child also feel a little more control over the process of discovering what's going to help. Do you think it'd be really soothing for me to, like pet your hair and kind of like soothe you, like in like a soft touch, or like maybe give you a massage and really rub your back? And that's sort of a sensorial input thing that might help the nervous system calm down. And say, well, I don't know, why don't we try the light touch tonight, and then, for a few nights, and see if that helps. And then we'll try the deep touch, over this weekend, and let's see if it makes any difference. But what I'm modeling here is the idea that like we can be with our kids in this query, and they can be a part of the investigation sort of team. And oftentimes that can help, especially with things related to stuff that feels out of our control.
Yes. And I really like that in saying, I can tell your body's tired. Your body is signaling because this, that, and this, like teaching I'm a big believer of advocating our children to be aware of their tiredness and signal it. And so it can get to a really hard place, say with a 7-year-old who's chronically overtired if that's the case, right? Because they're a little more wired, and so they don't look as tired. And they may need the parent to say, okay, tonight, we're going to wind down earlier, or things like that. But you brought up another piece that I feel like parents don't realize, is how hard it is for some children to calm and be ready for sleep, which I think was something to do with the other client question.
Yeah,
It's
so
point
I can
to
read,
knowledge.
I can read Elise's question, second part of her question. So she says, it takes 1 to 2 hours to wind one of my kiddos down for bed. What are some sleep hygiene tools to help? I'd love to kick this to Katie first this time, and just, yeah, would love to hear what you've seen working for families out there. And I happen to know that this is her younger child. This is her 5-year-old. So would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think in, both the questions, the night waking and the bedtime, they're related, but they're also kind of separate. So one of the parents asked specifically about sleep hygiene. And one thing that can help, that I've really found helps, is the concept of like the sleep funnel. In the afternoon, evening, you do things that have more bigger energy, and you're, further away from the actual bed. And then as you get closer in, you kind of bring the energy down slowly and you move toward the bed. So once they're, say, upstairs, they're not going back downstairs. But after dinner, when they are downstairs, take them for a walk, let them play on the playground. And then when they get home, they go upstairs, they brush their teeth. Maybe if they still need movement, they can do some yoga poses, they can do some breathing. So things that still meet that kind of need for movement and connection, but kind of bring the energy down. I find it's also helpful if parents do it too, like telling a kid like, oh, here, do this pose is not it's not as effective as saying, okay, like, you don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it because I would like to calm down too. And, just do it. And oftentimes they'll join you. And if not the first time, maybe the second or third time, And
Yeah, the family wind down time, like
yeah,
me,
yeah,
their wind down. Yeah, that's lovely. Beautiful.
definitely. So that is kind of a big part of the sleep hygiene that I think is helpful. Also, I think the parents really need to consider what their goals are and what their boundaries are. Some families, they are perfectly happy sleeping in the kid's bed, and if it helps them fall asleep. And some families, they want to say goodnight and then walk out the door, and really being clear about, where those boundaries are. And again, also in the middle of the night, like, some families like to have, a bed on the floor next to the parents' bed. And okay, if you come in the night, you can sleep there, but I'm not getting up. And other families really want the child to stay in their own room. So I think a lot of it depends on what works for the family. And you can kind of take the family goals and then come from that angle, like, okay, this is what we need to work on. What are your ideas? What are my ideas? This is really the goal. Also, I love podcasts, audiobooks. And there's a lot of like mindfulness, meditation podcasts. There's also almost, I'd say, half of children's books now also come as audiobooks. So if there's a kid that's especially kind of nervous or fearful, oftentimes listening to that same book every night will be really helpful, or they're really like that. Or, you can listen to the mindfulness meditation with them and then leave after that. Also, in the middle of the night, that can be helpful. For my daughter, she's only 4, and I try to be super consistent. And one of the things that she really likes, like, she's like, oh, I want to come and sleep in your bed. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to sleep in my bed, but I'll walk you back to your room and we can, put on your audiobook and I'll tuck you back in. And, and she's like, oh, okay. But yeah, having, something to listen to, it kind of distracts you. And then also if it's something calm or familiar, it can help fall asleep.
And I want to connect that to something that was asked about night terrors or, worries, anxiety, all of this piece. I think both of you have touched on something familiar being really helpful and comforting, right? And there is a whole science for how we can take like a dysregulated, fearful, like, kind of fight flight response and bring it down to baseline again and kind of down regulate the nervous system. And without breaking down the science behind that right now, knowing that distraction and familiarity are actually really helpful for bringing your sort of your attention to where better self-management is possible. And so that's why I can't believe how many times I've heard it, but we played the exact same nap music in this preschool. And I asked the teachers who had been there for more than 10 years, how long have you been playing this? Like, since I started. And I asked the teacher who'd been there for more than 10 years, how long have you been listening to music? He's like, since before I started. She's like, so basically the people founded this school over 20 years ago use this
Yeah.
tape. And I looked at the tape and it's like on its last leg. And I said, what are you going to do when this tape dies? Because there's still a cassette tape. Like, that's how old it was. And there was something though about the familiarity. It also happened to have a heartbeat in it and some white noise built into this kind of lullaby. And we got those little 2.5 to 3.5-year-olds, all the way up until 4, asleep on their cots consistently every single day in year-round preschool to that same track.
Yep.
Same routine. And we gave them the same cot in the same spot with their same blanket. Like, there's all these pieces that just really helped them to go, oh, I'm safe. I know this is familiar. I know it well enough to relax. There's nothing not too novel to like wake me up and make me a little more vigilant of what's going to happen next. It's more of this, oh, right. This is how it works. And this is how it is. And this is where I get to just release and relax. So any last tips on like night terrors or nightmares in particular? I love the notebook idea. There's, the familiarity, the podcast or something, the audiobook. Any last thoughts about that piece?
If I jump in with the night terrors, I think the question, just making sure that listeners understand the difference between nightmares and night terrors. Night terrors are experienced within 40% of children 4 to 12, and you can't really do a lot with night terrors when they're happening and they sound gut-wrenching and terrible. But if you interrupt the child, you're often stretching the episode because the child's not going to remember. They're not making the normal transition from deep sleep to REM sleep, and they're kind of caught between phases and they have to kind of work it out. So just making sure when the families are saying night terrors, that they mean that, where they can't seem to wake up the child is not, fully awake, they're sleepwalking or they're screaming and it sounds really bad, versus a nightmare that they had a bad dream and they're able to communicate with you and be comforted by you when you're in the room. Just wanted to make that separation. And another way that I like to work with like toddlers and school-age kids is kind of what Katie was saying, but wrapping everything around sleep jobs. It's mommy's job to make sure you sleep healthy, and then stating the problem and what is your job at sleep? What do they think they're expected to do? And then, like she said, she has a paper. I send those for the child to take ownership of their jobs, and they love it because you're tapping into that cognitive development of being empowered and then understanding what's expected, because it's all here on the chart. My job is to lay quietly. My job is to close my eyes. My job is to work at going back to sleep. My job is to stay in my room, or my job is to stay on my mattress. Whatever. My job is to take care of my body and not bother the sibling who is over there, and then you're talking about the whole family's better sleep and promoting the good night's rest and the sleep environment promoting sleep, like the Better Sleep Council does.
I love that piece. It reminds me of how sometimes I'll get into conversations with some of my clients around, well, what is their role besides obviously creating some structure and sticking to it and like doing the soothing things and watching the time and setting the little penguin light or whatever it is, right? I was like, but what about the 20 minutes where they're falling asleep? What does that look like in your household? And then we sometimes come up with a job of, it's our job to have quiet time in the whole house for the next 20 to 30 minutes. So no TV, no like loud conversation, no like big noises. And I just think, it's amazing how we can play a role in setting the environment up alongside the kids' jobs. And one of my favorite jobs for preschool kids, this is my hot tip, is to have them show you their resting body And you name some of the aspects of that, Jessica, in there in the jobs you just shared, but it's sort of this idea, and we established it as they would lay on their bellies with their arms to their sides, their head turned to one side, lay quietly and still, and allow us to tuck them in or allow us to rub their back. And we would actually make it such an important part of their job that we would say, oh, I'll read the next page if you show me your resting body, or oh, I'll tuck you in, but you need to show me your resting body. And it just became this phrase that like we everyone in the room knew what it was and knew, and it gave the child an active role in down regulating to sleep and resting. And boy, did it work. And especially you have to have something that works when you're a room full of 24 kids. There's no, it has to, right? So you have to use the things that work. And that was one of our tried and true pieces. So a little gold for y'all at the end of this, piece here. I want to do a little wrap up around, what you would like parents like Elise and Connie and others who are going to be listening to this episode, moms, dads, grandparents, caregivers, educators, other people who have 24 children in their nap room. If you could imagine just being like a little earpiece in their ear, right? And even think about for yourself when you are maybe having a low moment in sleep with your family where you were exhausted or overtired and you started to feel maybe a little hopeless and sort of desperate for solutions. Like if you could go and just be right next to yourself at that time and other parents out there and just whisper one thing to them or to yourself, like, what would it be and why? And I'd like to kick it to Katie first.
I would definitely, in that very moment, I would say, let it go. This is not the time to fix this problem. And then I would also say, make a plan, write it down, and be as clear as possible with yourself and the children.
Beautiful. Yeah. Love it. Sounds very actionable and humane. How about you, Jessica? What do you have for us? What would you say?
I would whisper, let's take a deep breath and center yourself and know that sleep is possible and children learn really fast and you can start over again tomorrow.
Wonderful. Powerful words from two powerful experts. Thank you so much, my gosh, for sharing your wisdom today. And I have to let folks know because they're going to be wanting to know how they can get in touch with each of you. So in the show notes, you have this information as well. But for you, those who are listening, you can get more information on better sleep and Jessica's work by visiting her website at www.sleephappyconsulting.com. And on her site, you can have a listen to her Good Mornings podcast, pick up some free resources about those sleep milestones we were talking about, and also her signature simple sleep solution. So please go check her out at sleephappyconsulting.com. And then for more information about Katie's work as a sleep and early parenting consultant, you can find her on Instagram at parenting doula, all one word, and also on her website, same name, parentingdoula.com. And again, check out those show notes to see other things and ways to stay in touch with these two. And I just want to congratulate the two of you for this awesome podcast episode. I know you're going to be helping so many families. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been such a pleasure to have you both.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I've loved learning about all your work and all the good you do in helping parents and children especially. So thank you so much for the invitation.
My pleasure. As we wrap up, remember, there's no one-size-fits-all way to parent. Keep nurturing those strong family bonds and watch resilience bloom in your community. You've got this. And if you found this episode valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can also hop over to thecalmempoweredparent.com for current events and to grab your copy of the Calm Parent Strategy Guide. You can even learn how to bring our free and low-cost workshops to your school or community. Your support means the world to us and helps us empower more parents and children. Let's do this together.